Japanese sixth-generation fighter. Star Wars becomes a reality. Even one glance at the world map is enough to understand how uncomfortable Japan feels next to the huge, heavily armed, authoritarian states of Russia and China. At the same time, the country of the rising sun has a history of wars with these countries, and Russia has not yet signed a peace treaty on the results of World War II. So it's understandable that Japan wants to have the most modern weapons so that it can stand up for itself. Today we'll talk about Japan's program to create a sixth-generation fighter that can stand up to the Russian Sushkas and the Chinese Chengdu. How does the Japanese military see this machine? And by the way, why is Japan building a sixth-generation aircraft without having a fifth? At present, the main combat aircraft of the Japanese Armed Forces is the F-2 fighter bomber, the result of the joint development of the Japanese company Mitsubishi Heavy Industries and American Lockheed Martin. The F-2 is a heavily revised version of the F-16, which belongs to Generation 4+. Japan has a total of 97 F-2 fighters and about 200 even older F-15J fighters. And China alone has more than 3,000 aircraft, most of which are Generation 4+ and 4++, the J-10 and J-11B fighters. It also includes more than 150 fifth-generation fighters, the J-20. You have to agree that this is a terrifying situation for the Japanese. The tenfold numerical advantage of China, not to mention the qualitative superiority, and then there are the Russians. Of course, the Japanese did not sit idly by. In the mid-90s, they wanted to replace their F-2s with the American Predators, the world's first fifth-generation F-22 Raptor. But in '97, the U.S. Congress banned the export of this aircraft. The Japanese took offense and began to develop their fifth-generation fighter. They even created an experimental prototype, X-2 Shinshin, which made a successful flight in 2016. But the military didn't like it. Expensive. $215 million apiece. So they decided to buy the American F-35, which cost $219 million. That's how the Americans know how to persuade. But not all of them. Mitsubishi Heavy Industries, the parent developer of the X-2 Shinshin, raised a scandal. Its brainchild is not inferior to the American Lightning in technical characteristics and is cheaper. So why is it so unfair? The scandal was hushed up. It's obvious by now Mitsubishi Heavy Industries became the main developer of a sixth-generation fighter called FX, or F-3. $48 billion is allocated for development. This will not be all the money for this program. What do the Japanese designers promise for such money? Oh, it'll be something fantastic, a real incarnation of the weapon from Star Wars. Let us list the most interesting things. The plane will be equipped with an electronic warfare system. So what, you say? The aircraft of the fifth generation and even 4++ already have it. Yes, but the Japanese plane will be able to burn the electronic brains of enemy weapons at a distance of up to 200 kilometers. That is, anything that has electronics, be it a plane or a missile, will not be able to approach the Japanese. For this purpose, the fighter will be equipped with a 180 kilowatt power unit. The fighter will use brand new information technologies which are already available, but in wide use due to the secrecy has not arrived. What kind of technology is not known yet? Probably has something to do with artificial intelligence and the enormous speed of data transfer and processing. The enemy pilot has only just thought of some maneuver, and the FX has already calculated everything and made the best decision. All that's known is that high-speed data transmission technology called integrated fire control for fighters will be introduced and could allow Japanese and possibly U.S. fighters to combine their sensors, increasing the accuracy of missiles beyond the line of sight. Each FX would be capable of controlling a flock of up to 3 drones, which could be equipped with either reconnaissance equipment or missiles. The drones will improve the FX's offensive capabilities while significantly reducing the vulnerability of the manned aircraft to enemy attacks. But frankly, this is no longer new. The Russians have developed and even tested the Su-70 stealth drone for their fifth-generation fighter, the Su-57. And the Su-57 can control 3 such assistants. What's interesting is how the Japanese are going to ensure invisibility for their fighter, because for the 6th generation aircraft, stealth technology is a matter of course. A unique material will be used for this. In today's stealth aircraft, the materials absorb radio waves well, so they're virtually invisible on radar. True, only in the decimeter, centimeter, and millimeter range, but they're perfectly recognizable in the meter range, and the Japanese will make their fighter jet out of a material that transmits radio waves. In addition to invisibility, it'll generate interference, preventing the enemy from using the radar equipment to the full extent. Plus, it'll use stealth plasma antenna technology to deflect radio waves. The antenna works by creating a temporary plasma that can change its physical properties through electrical control. When activated, the antenna is also capable of transmitting and receiving messages. This will make the aircraft invisible in the meter radio wave range as well. And the engine cooling system under development will make it invisible in the infrared range as well. In short, the plane will be practically invisible and it'll be better to approach it. Not only will it interfere with the radio equipment, but it also can burn out all the radio equipment. By the way, the Japanese are not going to connect the parts with rivets, but glue them together. This reduces the weight of the construction and adds to its rigidity. Great attention is paid to the super maneuverability of the aircraft. We all know how the F-35 is criticized for its low maneuverability, as it has no variable thrust vector engine. The Japanese plan to equip their aircraft with 2 modified XF91 engines, the afterburner thrust of which will be 16.5 thousand kgf each. And they'll be able to change the thrust vector by 20 degrees, which will make the plane super maneuverable. Now about the weapon, which is assumed to be put on the FX. Of course, the machine from Star Wars is just obliged to have a laser, and the press says that the FX will have one. But we can't do without good old-fashioned missiles. The FX will be armed with 6 ASM-3 anti-ship missiles housed inside the fuselage. The ASM-3 has a top speed of over Mach 3 and hits targets at a range of up to 400 kilometers. Frankly speaking, after the appearance of hypersonic weapons, these characteristics do not impress anymore. But it's not too late for a change. We think the Japanese developers will still surprise us. After all, $45 billion can surely do wonders. In general, the FX will be larger than the F-22, which indicates that the aircraft will have a longer range. This, of course, will make the logistics of its combat use easier. Japan has many islands, and all of them will need to be protected. And when does the Japanese military expect to get this marvel? The FX prototype is scheduled to be built in 2024. The first flight will be in 2028, and the plan is to begin operation in 2035. The plans are quite optimistic. The first flight of this fantastic aircraft will be in some 6 years. But there's no other way. Look at what's going on in the world right now. There's a global breakdown of the entire established system of world security. The Russians have attacked Ukraine, China is carnivorous about Taiwan. The next 10 years promise to be very tumultuous. Therefore, having effective super-modern weapons will not be superfluous. What do you think about the Japanese 6th generation fighter program? And in general, the creation of more and more advanced lethal weapons? Write about it in the comments below. If you liked the video, give it a like, and of course, don't forget to subscribe to our channel. There will be many more interesting materials about modern weapons.